Now, over the years, I've had plenty of also confusing Herpa Wings models, but this one feels especially confusing. Why that is, I will get into in this video, which I can only make because of my partner here on the channel, Jumbolino Model, who so very kindly have provided me with this aircraft model. And you can find maybe this confusing model, but also many other great models on their website, where they have reasonable prices and great service because they are collectors themselves. So I can highly recommend them to you. You can find a link to them in the video description below. With that, hello and welcome to a new episode of Review, where we today will take a closer look at an Airbus A340-600 of Lufthansa. And something very confusing already with the box, because according to Herpa Wings, their customers would not know what they're buying if they don't have a cutout so they can see the model inside. But here, we clearly have an image of the aircraft in real life, so I assume that Herpa customers buying Lufthansa models are just a little bit smarter than the average Herpa Wings model collector. In any case, on the backside of the box we have a lovely rendition of the aircraft model, and we can see, yes, this is an officially licensed model. I mean, that's not always the case with Herpa, so great to see that they have the license in this case. And here she is, the Airbus A340-600 in the standard livery of Lufthansa. Something we can't say that often because Herpa loves their special liveries on Lufthansa models, although to be fair, it's mostly on narrow-body aircraft, not so much on wide-body aircraft. But back in 2020, Herpa already released the Airbus A340-600 in the standard livery with a different registration code, a model I was really not that happy about. But I guess 5 years later, it is fair enough to make a re-release if it wasn't for so many other missing models of the Lufthansa fleet. But in any case, as I say, this model is quite confusing, and I will get into why that is. But firstly, we just take a look at the model as it is to see if it was worth our money and time. And as always, we start to tour around the aircraft model with a look at the tail section where we have the Lufthansa branding. When we look on the horizontal stabilizer, we also find a little bit of printed detailing. And on the fuselage, we then find the full registration code of the aircraft and the flag of the Federal Republic of Germany. And I can take my time in saying Federal Republic of Germany because there is no other detailing here that is worth mentioning, really, apart from maybe this tiny little mark underneath the cabin door and then the APU exhaust at the very tail of the aircraft. But perhaps we can find a little bit more detailing at the front of the aircraft. Here across the fuselage we of course have the writing of Lufthansa. Underneath that we have the aircraft type specification. We do also have some static ports, we should not omit that. And next to the cabin doors we have the little yellow squares, the last remaining yellow of the Lufthansa branding with the new livery of the airline. We of course also have a Star Alliance logo, of which the airline is a founding member, and underneath the cockpit windows we have the Lufthansa logo, leading us to the cockpit section itself with the cockpit windows and the window wipers, and that's then all the detailing we can find here. So from the cockpit section we can move on to the engine nacelles. Now they have unsurprisingly been kept in all white, just as most of the fuselage, but do have the silver leading edge printed on, as well as the safety markings. Especially the safety markings really do elevate the aircraft model around here because we really do not have that much detailing on the engines. The physical detailing, however, is I think quite nice, that I don't want to complain about, especially here from the front. Very, very nice. You can see the engine fan blades. Oh my god, look at all these lovely models. Oh, I'm sorry that I interrupted your review, but we'll get back to that model in just a second. But just check out all these lovely models. And perhaps you're like me and you just don't know which one you should add next to your collection, because here you're truly spoiled for choice with all the scales and all the die-cast manufacturers that you can find at the Jumbolino Model store. So do check them out. You can find a link to them in the video description below. Now on the fuselage, just above the wings, we have an emergency exit printed on, leading us straight to the wings, which we should also take a closer look at. Starting off with the top side, where we have the different flaps, slats and spoilers carved out quite nicely. We have the markings as to where to walk on the wings, and also, and I think this is the first time we've seen that on the A340-600, the emergency exit markings. That's quite nice. The underside of the wings has more nice physical detailing, and of course the A340-600 also has winglets, which Herpa has applied to this aircraft model. We will get back to the wings and the winglets later in the video. Now, of course, the A340-600 also has landing gear, which we see here. This is the standard landing gear that Herpa uses for all the Airbus A340-600s, with the additional landing gear in the center as the airframe was too heavy for the standard landing gear of Airbus when they developed the aircraft. The front landing gear also fine, except of course for the missing printed details. On the belly of the aircraft we don't really have any printed detailing apart from the Herpa branding, but who cares about that. But we do have a hole in the fuselage for a stand that is not included with this aircraft model, but as there are no printed details to be destroyed here, in this case I don't really care. And we have a little bit of physical detailing in form of the ram air intakes. Could look better, but I guess it's better than nothing. From the belly of the aircraft, we can then move on to the top of the airframe where we have some set domes. Now, something that many collectors don't know about Herpa and their set domes is the fact that Herpa does a raffle when it comes to set domes in terms of size, placement and colors of them. But in this case, we've been very lucky because they've actually managed to place them pretty much correctly with more or less the correct size, and even the colors are correct on these set domes. This is very unusual for Herpa Wings, so we have to applaud them in this case that have actually done it correctly. And then last but certainly not least, we do also have the doors with the cargo compartments printed on here in the back of the aircraft and also here at the front of the aircraft. So there we have it, the Airbus A340-600 in the current standard livery of Lufthansa from Herpa Wings in scale 1 to 500. And what can we say about this aircraft model? I mean, there are truly some surprising elements for me on this aircraft model. I mean, firstly, yes, I was surprised that Herpa managed to add the set domes correctly in the right size and the right colors. As I say, that does not happen every time. I was pleasantly surprised about the safety markings on the wings. That was a nice addition. And overall, yes, the model of course does not have a plethora of detailing, but it does actually have one or two more details than we normally would get from Herpa Wings. Now, especially on an Airbus A340-600, which has a super long airframe, and with this livery so much white on it, it really would need many more details to actually make it a great scale 500 aircraft model. It just shows much more on models like this how much Herpa is skipping out on printed detailing, even if it has already a few more details than we normally would have seen from Herpa Wings. But as I have said a few times now, I think this model is quite strange, and it has nothing to do with the fact that Herpa's actually added a little bit more printed detailing to it. It has nothing to do with the set domes or any of the other things so far apart from the wings. Now, what I want to tell you here is that, of course, we do see changes with aircraft models over time. And if we took a Herpa Wings model from 10 years ago and looked at a model from today, even though it was the same aircraft type, there might be some differences. You would actually expect there to be some differences. You would expect the models to improve. That's not always the case with Herpa Wings, but for sure you would expect some differences. But if you have the same aircraft type and two models that have been released and announced at the same time, would you expect them to look the same? I mean, I would, but clearly Herpa doesn't, because Herpa announced and released at the same time two Airbus A340-600s, this Lufthansa and a Conviasa, which I have already reviewed. You can check that out on my channel. But when we place these two models next to each other, we see there is a difference. And there's a difference with the wings. Now, that Herpa has had models with two flat-angled wings, we have seen with other aircraft types, but not so far with the A340-600. And the Conviasa was fine. So why is the Lufthansa not? This is really strange. Because as I say, these two models have been produced at the same time. They're coming out of the same factory, have been released at the same time, but they are different. Why are these two models different, Herpa? It makes no sense. This is super strange. And again, if you were to ask Herpa about this, they would of course play dumb and say, oh, we don't know about it. We would have to look into it, as usual. But this is perhaps one of the strangest things I've come across in years, because these two models have been produced from the same factory at the same time and been released at the same time, and yet they look so different. What is going on, Herpa? So yeah, honestly, I'm a bit lost for words because I really don't know what to make of this. How that is possible is beyond what I can even come up with theories. I really don't understand how this is possible, but clearly it is, as we can see. But what do you think? Why is Herpa not capable of making two Airbus A340-600 produced at the same time look the same? If you have any theories, let me know in the comment section down below. I would love to hear what you think is the reason behind this strange, I don't want to call it fiasco, but it is certainly strange. Now, with that, we have reached the end of today's episode. If you have enjoyed this video, then feel free to leave a like. That would be much appreciated. If you're new around here, why not hit subscribe? And with that, thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you soon again. I'm checking out, and bye.